Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this knowledge exchange workshop, use of data to inform local decision making. The purpose of today's webinar is to really share the experience, share the knowledge between the partners. So this webinar is run within the EU Health Fund project called SCIROCCO Exchange, which has the main objective to support health and social care authorities to implement and scale up integrated care. And one of the big mainstream of this project is the knowledge transfer and mutual learning, as we believe that we really need to use the existing knowledge, existing experience, good practices in much more effective way rather than reinventing the wheel. So this topic of using of data was actually identified by one of our partners in the SCIROCCO Exchange project, Founders Agency of Health and Care, as a topic for the mutual exchange and knowledge transfer. So that's a bit of background how this workshop has evolved. And for the purpose of today's meeting, we will particularly looking at the experience or at the work of the Data Lab, which is one of our innovation center in Scotland. You will hear more from our two distinctive speakers, Anna Scott and David Cameron. And in terms of kind of like focus or key areas that we will be tackling today, it will be about techniques and tools to support workforce in using the data. So will be about health, data health literacy skills, a professional development program that is run by a Data Lab, and in general we will be looking into how to analyze and make sure that we know how to understand and use the data for decision making at the local level. So without further ado, I'll ask Cameron and Anna to give you a presentation that they prepare. And then, as I said, after that joint presentation, we'll just have the rest of the meeting for a discussion. So as we said at the beginning, please feel free to keep posting your question in the chat as we go, and we'll be picking them up during the discussion. So I'll hand over to Anna and Cameron now.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andrea. And thank you everyone else for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys about our experiences and what we do in Scotland, and to try and promote data sharing and usage in the health space, but wider as well. Let me get this going. Fantastic. That should be it working. So sorry, 2 seconds. There we are. So as you say, Scotland is, the Data Lab is Scotland's Innovation Centre for Data and AI. So our remit is to help Scotland enhance and grow its data capabilities. That's across talent, across understanding in the workplace. And there's multiple ways we do this. So hi, I'm Cameron. I'm one of the BDs for the Data Lab, and I'm currently leading on skills, and I'm based in Aberdeen. Anna, who will pick up for me in just a few moments, is one of our project delivery managers and delivers some of the exceptional work that's going on at the Data Skills for Work initiative, hosted within the Data Lab. So as I've just mentioned, our mission is to help Scotland maximise value from data and lead the world to a data-powered future. It's really high level and shiny chat, but there's a lot of nitty-gritty and detail into that. But there's 3 main avenues we take to really drive that home: support to innovate, community and events, and skills and talent. And we see this work across all sectors. We're here talking predominantly about health, but it is analogous across most places, just with restrictions around what can be shared, obviously tighter in certain areas. So the support to innovate is us making sure industry and organizations in every space have access to academics and access to the skills and techniques they need to innovate with data. Innovation is a different thing to everyone. innovation for someone might actually be getting a sensible database set up to allow data sharing, and innovation to someone else could be using artificial intelligence to really produce a new cutting edge way of working. So we work across that spectrum, and as I mentioned, try and bring everyone up to a similar level together. If everyone's at a more literate level with their data, that allows us to make better decisions and work in that way. The community and events, this is a huge one, that as this burgeoning industry is putting its feelers into everything else, and obviously data cuts through all disciplines now, keeping that community together and getting people talking and excited and understanding of what's happening is really, really key. And we do that through Community Platform, which is a new initiative from us that we've recently started to allow individuals access to the Data Community Network. Events, so we're currently running a big festival is the best way to describe it for data, and I'll talk about that later. And then skills and talent. All of this good data stuff is only possible with the right people, with the right skills and the right understanding across all levels. That's not just the data professionals. These are the people making these data-driven decisions. They don't need to be data scientists, but they need to understand the value, all the way through to the data citizens and data workers. As a citizen, I need to be aware of how to best access and provide my data to healthcare so they can give me the best provision of healthcare that I can get. And workers, the people that will be inputting the notes, inputting the data on a basic level, they maybe don't see the analytics behind it, but they are a key, valuable piece and cog in that machine, and it all falls apart without them. So it's making sure everyone has the right skills and attracting the right talent as we go forward. So on the support to innovate front, as I mentioned, this is us providing guidance, matching funding and resources to help individuals innovate in their space. And innovation is sometimes a bit of a intimidating word. There's a lot of connotations to it that aren't always the most pleasant. It's costly, it's time consuming, it's this, that, and the next thing. Am I ready to innovate is something we come across quite a lot. But that's what we're here to do. We're here to bring people to a comfortable space to start being creative, to start thinking outside of their normal processes and using data to enhance that and drive that. So that's with industry, with data science experts, which we have in-house to help manage these projects. It would be really, I think, silly of us to try and manage and guide data projects without any data expertise. So I'm quite happy to stick my hand up and say, I have absolutely minimal data science skills, but we have people in-house that can help add value to those conversations and do the technical guidance. Academics and researchers are obviously key to this as well. It's in the universities and in the academic institutions that a lot of the really great new cutting edge data science and data work is being developed and exploited, and getting that out to the public sector and to industry is what this pillar for us, this Innovate pillar, is all about. External funding as well, so not just funding from the Data Lab, UKRI bodies, smart grants are things we work with very consistently at the Data Lab to help people apply for these things, and to help frame their challenges in a way that the grants might be able to support. A few healthcare innovation successes we've had in this space. The first one, using data for dangerous fall prediction and prevention. That's in a home, in either sheltered accommodation or an individual's private residence. Having data feeds that allow early warning alarms or behavioral flags to be put up to get to these people before they either have the fall or predict that it's happening, and get really quick support to them. This is obviously a big one for data sharing. There's the companies that run these projects and run the technology, but then also making sure that the health sector is plugged in to be able to deliver medical attention and support as and when needed. So this has been a really, really great project for us. And COPD patient hospitalization reduction using technology and data monitoring. So that's giving people access to the right data to be able to not self-medicate, but care and make sure they're in the most healthy position they can be. And that's had a drastic reduction in COPD patient hospitalizations, freeing up resource, freeing up individuals to treat and care for other individuals, other patients. So these are just two examples of where some really great data sharing and allowing the right people access to the right data has reduced pressures and made for a better healthcare environment for the people in Scotland. So the community and events, I've spoken about this, just touching it briefly before. It's really key to make sure the professionals in this data space and non-professionals have access to the rest of the community. How do we give them the best possible support? And that's not just official support. There's peer-to-peer support, peer learning, and getting connected into the wider community. We don't want to have to be the go-between between everyone as well. If they're looking for the same thing, we want them to be able to access the network and access these events to make connections and to get the right community and group around them to be as effective as they can in their data decisions. Use the experiences of even other industries and other organizations in their space. So this is really, really key to us advancing Scotland as a whole. It's not just these pockets, it's putting them together and making sure it's a countrywide effort. One example of this, so we run, I mentioned our Festival for Data annually. It's called Data Fest, imaginative name, I'm sure you'll agree. But we had our first session in May. This year we've got three distinct sessions, sorry. Across the year. May was our future, and that was a focus on where will data be taking us, how can it support the future across industries, and what will that look like? It's not a job reduction, it's job enhancement. How do we help create roles and develop the current ones? The next one, which is I think really relevant for what we're talking about today, our people, is focusing in on the social and well-being aspects of data use. How aware are you of your data usage and how available your data is, and who's using it to really make your lives best? And then what's happening to do that? What's happening to enhance these aspects of healthcare and social well-being? As I've mentioned, the projects we've had going have been a great reduction in hospitalizations, but there's a social aspect to that as well that we're keen to explore, and there's going to be some fantastic speakers. So if these are shared afterwards, the link is in there. Otherwise, please have a look online. You'll be able to find DataFest, and tickets are available. Everything, as obviously, is online this year. So it'd be great if some of you could attend and maybe give some feedback and your expectations. But it's a really, really great event. And our planet later in the year, all about how is data helping support the fight against climate change, how integral digital and data is to that. And I think that's fair to say about everything. Climate change is obviously one of these big transitions that everyone's talking about now, but every small transition from here within an organization will have some underpinning in the data space or digital space. There will be some technological component to it that needs to be understood and needs to be properly managed from the foundations up to make sure the change and the transformation is as effective as possible. And then skills and talent. So how do we attract these really fantastic individuals to our countries, to our organizations, and how do we keep them around? Or how do we take the people we have working with us in an existing capacity and upskill them into the roles we need them to fill? Anna will talk about this in a much more articulate manner later on in terms of the upskilling and reskilling space. For me, and lovely visual here, so the demand in the last 5 years for data science in the UK has grown 1,300%, which is pretty staggering, but I think we can all understand, and given the context of the conversation, know that that is the case. Data science expertise and skills are a severe shortage, especially when you get into the detail for things like data engineers, for which the demand's grown about 450%, data architects, strategists. There's a whole load of specializations within data science that are needed to make those projects run and grease the wheels of what we're trying to do here. So it's making sure they're available. we need to future-proof the skills we've got as well. We don't just want them skills for the moment. How do they continually add value? And that's where things like CPD that I lead on come in. How do we keep iterating and supporting organizations develop their workforce as their needs develop? And that's across the sectors. This continuous piece is often quite industry focused, but in the private sector as well, that this is obviously super key, as it has a much longer running employment term. The people are likely to stick in a public sector organization significantly longer. So there's a lot more need and necessity to upskill and reskill them as they're in that opportunity. So we've got a number of MSc projects as well that we support. So we sponsor 160 master's students in Scotland every year across a whole range of things: business analytics, AI, health and data science is one that we've recently added to in Aberdeen and St Andrews University, because that need is being seen a lot more. The universities are developing these courses to help enhance the skills that are there. The big one for me that we'll talk about now is the professional development program, and we are very, very aware that there's multiple levels that this touches. As I've spoken about, there's the data workers that have to understand the importance of their roles, getting the data right first time, connecting things properly and recording properly is the basis for good data science, even if they're not doing that work themselves. So helping them understand that. But on the flip side, there's a top-down approach, and we really, really focus on leadership training, making sure non-data literate or less data literate individuals with non-technical backgrounds are able and comfortable to make data decisions, because you need your leadership and decision-making teams to understand exactly what the value from the data sharing and good quality data is, to then be able to get their buy-in to develop projects to make these changes and to push forward. So we have a lot of, or do a lot of workshops and roundtables in the leadership space, geared towards helping them make the decisions that are right for their organizations. In that theme, and we'll talk about it in a second a bit more, we have a data leaders program. Again, getting these non-technicals more comfortable. And online learning is a huge one. In the last year, we've digitized a whole load of our content because we've had to. We can't go to people to put on workshops and presentations in person as we have previously. But it's about getting that online and making people aware of the right thing, making sure they've got access to the pieces they need. So we've got a number of things in driving value from data, making case studies as well. That's quite a big part of online learning, being able to access case studies relevant to your industry, relevant to your needs, if they exist, and finding that if they don't, how do we get that innovation going in the space? And then the data skills for work piece, which Anna is leading. She'll be able to talk about that a lot more, but it covers all of these aspects, and is a really great framework for Scotland, and that we're using quite extensively now in her area, but beyond, to make a really great, easily accessible, structured format for people to go looking for CPD and learning materials depending on their level and their requirements within an organization. The data leaders program I spoke about there, I'm just going to leave off on this because I feel like this is one of the biggest value adds we've come around to recently, is the data lab. So it says data leaders, it is leaders of data projects, not necessarily leaders in a data technical sense. These people are C-suite level decision makers, and they're going to be making decisions on data projects consistently from now on. That's what these roles entail. There's a lot of senior operational officers, finance directors, managing directors, heads of departments that are essentially the accountable individuals for projects being delivered ultimately. So there's a number of theme workshops, and these workshops are learning based. How do we get people them understanding data strategy, data architecture, data engineering to the best that we can, and they need to be roundtables, so that peer influence and support that we spoke about previously, that's really, really key in these organizations, to feel they're not alone, they're not the only ones. Let's have these conversations about the projects that they've got, the difficulties they're coming across, and everything in that space that can be supported. One-to-one mentor sessions with our team to really just get down to the detail of how we help them and how we help them advance their organization's agenda. And then again, bringing it back to the community, access to the network, fireside chats, talks, presentations, interactions with leaders in that space, people that have been there before, that have the experience, that could really bring and advance these people, the individuals in the programs, knowledge set and skill set quickly. We don't want to retread old ground. We want to be able to disseminate the knowledge and experience we have as quickly as possible. And this has been really, really successful to date. So at a high level, this is what the Data Lab's all about and what we're trying to do. I'm going to leave you now with Anna, who's going to talk about the Data Skills for Work initiative and everything that they're doing in the region. Anna?
Thanks very much, Cameron. And yes, thanks for that, for leading me in there and weaving through the data citizens, workers, professionals and leaders that we're reaching through the Data Skills for Work programme. So this is a regional approach to workforce upskilling. It's part of a wider programme of activity called Data Driven Innovation, which is being led by the University of Edinburgh and the University of and Heriot-Watt University. And the ambition is to make Edinburgh and Scotland the data capital of Europe. But to do that, we need the right skills within our workforce. Can you move on to the next slide, please, Cameron? I just realised I'm not in control of the. So Data Skills for Work is one of 4 projects under what's called the Data Driven Innovation Skills Gateway. It's funded through the Scottish Government by the Edinburgh and South East Scotland City Region deal. So geographically, we're focusing on Edinburgh and the Lothians, the areas surrounding the city, Fife and the Scottish borders. And the aim is to improve data literacy at all levels and give all citizens within these regions access to quality data education and training. So the Data Skills for Work is one of 4 projects under the Skills Gateway. Data education in schools is developing resources for schools to teach data literacy at primary and secondary level, and that also includes professional development for teachers who are teaching these subjects, and that's being led at Edinburgh University, but including all the universities in the region. Data education in colleges is developing new content for further education, in a lot of contextualising data science and data skills within, for example, healthcare courses, sports science and even hairdressing. It's led by Edinburgh College, but involves colleges in Fife and the Scottish Borders and West Lothian. Data education in universities is creating new undergraduate data science courses and data placements with employers, as well as modules for delivering data skills as part of other degrees, nursing being one of them. And that is being led at Edinburgh Napier University, that involves, again, working across the higher education sector in the region. And finally, Data Skills for Work, led by us here at the Data Lab. And this works across colleges, universities, but also private providers, and to develop short courses suitable for workforce upskilling. The programme's aimed at people who are already in employment, but who are in jobs that are at risk of redundancy because of automation, or who belong to underrepresented groups who have experienced barriers to education, training and job progression. Next slide, please, Cameron. So Data Skills for Work aims to help adults in Edinburgh and South East Scotland to upskill and reskill with data in order to progress in their careers. The programme acts as a gateway for individuals and businesses seeking data-related training, signposting to relevant courses provided by local training providers, and targeting workers in these occupations where technology is having a big impact and there is potentially the risk of redundancy. The core 4 key deliverables of the project are our data skills credit scheme. This is small grants of £500 per learner to upskill and reskill. This allows individual learners to take control of their own upskilling, and we have a list of approved training providers that we know are providing the right level of workforce upskilling that is around that, that price bracket that we can signpost learners to. The funding scheme is targeted at at-risk workers as well as women, ethnically diverse communities and disabled groups. So far we've supported about 200 learners in the region. That's since we launched in December last year, and we've attracted some additional funding from the Scottish Government, which has enabled us to almost double those numbers across the rest of Scotland. We're using this funding to pilot different approaches to delivering grants and funding. So we've also run an employer fund where local employers can apply to us for funding to upskill groups of employees, and also grants for training providers to develop and deliver training that's free at the point of access to our target groups. Our data adoption programme taps into the data lab's existing expertise in that data leadership place. So this is training for managers, potential data leaders, to help them identify their requirements and plan for a data literate workforce. So you've got your data strategy, you've got a data project on the go. What skills do you need in order to deliver that? Do you need to hire in new talent, or do you have latent talent within your organisation that you can upskill and deliver that project? The data skills journey is a framework for the region's workforce, and we've developed this through consultation with local employers. The idea isn't to map the whole discipline of data science, it's to identify what particular skills are needed at each level of data literacy. So for data citizens, data workers, data professionals and data leaders, what are the key the core skills and competencies that you need at each level, and where are the gaps? So we particularly identified gaps for data engineering at data professional level, and also things like communication skills and creativity needed in order for teams to communicate with one another. All of the training that we list on our training catalogue and skills portal are mapped to the data skills journey so that people can easily identify the right training for their current level of expertise, and also to help identify future training requirements for employers. And our data skills portal, as I said, hosts our training catalogue, and the idea is that we will start to develop some curated learner journeys through that catalogue, signposting learners out to the universities, colleges and other training providers that are offering these sorts of skills. What we've done, all the work that we've done so far has been quite general and broad. We haven't really looked at a particular sector or sectors as yet, because we wanted to do the initial mapping first of all, but we have run some workshops after the initial piece of employer research that we did, and got some feedback from health and social care colleagues. Healthcare is one of these sectors that is less susceptible to automation, along with things like education and public sector professional services. However, data science should be seen as a key component of the digital health sector specifically, and that digital skills provision could be improved across all levels of education. We understand from health and social care colleagues that we've spoken to that there's still work to do to sell data skills, particularly at the entry level, and the relevance of data upskilling to people working in these sectors, and that it's important not to forget the human element and the meaning of data, and that data is people's stories. What was suggested was that it was best to embed data learning in other sector qualifications, such as what's happening with the data education in universities and colleges, where data becomes a crucial element of other formal education routes. And that, I think, is my last slide. Yep. So thanks very much, and I think Cameron and I are both really happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Anna and Cameron, for your presentation. So yeah, we'll now have quite a lot of time for a chat and discussion, as we were saying. So I'll first open the floor. Who wants to get started before I pick up the question from the chat? Are there any particular questions?
So picking up on Joanna's question about, it was a 1,300% increase in the need for data science skills in Scotland. That is the right number. That is astounding, but that is correct, and that's over the last 5 years in Scotland. So it's not on an annual basis, but over the 5-year period, that has been the increase in requirement for data science roles in industry and across the country. So it's quite impressive. I see Anna's also put the right numbers in there. So that's what we're competing with, and I think the difficulty everyone has is data science is, as both Anna and I said, non-specific to an industry. So it's not a skill set that as an industry you're competing with other organizations for, you're competing with everyone else for these skills, or 90% of other organizations that also want data science and data engineering and data architecture skill sets within their organizations. So it's how do we attract these people to specific organizations.
Cameron, can I ask you?
Sure.
Can I ask you what the profile is? What the profile is across that? So how many of those, in terms of that demand, how many are kind of I don't know, so let's say graduate level, and how many of them are non-graduate?
So to be quite frank, I don't know the breakdown of those numbers.
Because obviously that's got an impact in terms of how you provide training. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
So no, absolutely. The demand for those skills, I think, is almost right now in a lot of the industries we're seeing, irrespective of what level you've come out with. Graduates are obviously a great, really high level source of resource for expertise. But there's a long lag time between industry need and need in organizations and the universities setting up new courses to meet that demand. For us, upskilling and reskilling is a very, very big part of meeting the demand and the consistently increasing demand for these skill sets. So I don't know the breakdown, Stuart, but for me, both of them are very, very key.
Yeah, I guess just in terms of who you're targeting and what the structure looks like, it's important.
Yeah.
I don't want to dominate this, but I had another question, which is health used data quite a lot for quite a long period of time, but I guess things are very rapidly changing now. So you have the cloud, you have much more encryption, you have software as a service, you have a whole range of developments. And how much do you see the need to upskill and reskill people who really are already essentially data practitioners, but they're data practitioners from, let's say, the era of 20 years ago or something like that, when they were last kind of extensively trained? Do you think that there's an opportunity there, and have you had any response from your healthcare people about that?
I'll let Anna pick up that one. You're probably better placed, Anna.
Well, I'm sort of thinking, so the funded MSc program that we have, the scholarships, the students that come onto those programs are given a wraparound sort of set of training that we've identified as being core to a lot of these courses, but aren't necessarily handled within the individual MSCs at the universities. So students are, we're teaching the master's students things like design thinking and communication skills, ethics, mapping, GIS mapping, and things like that. And so we have identified a set of skills that's sort of additional to what's being taught through the master's programs at universities, for these students.
I think from my perspective, Stuart, what you've said is, so for me being Aberdeen, funnily enough, there's a lot of energy kicking around. They're in a similar position. They've used a very large amount of data in very specific ways for a long time. It's just for us being able for them to translate that into what is now currently the data language that is being spoken by the new students. So they have to be able to communicate what they've been doing to the new graduates who have a different learning and skill set and been taught potentially different terminologies for things. So they need kept up to speed, and that's where the CPD sits. They need to be able to articulate their skill set and what they've been doing to the new generation and new skills that are coming into the organization and the workplace. Does that answer your question at all?
Yeah, it goes some way to do it. Yeah. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble muting and unmuting, but anyway, it's not for me. It's really you want Flanders to be saying things, not me. Anyway, I'll shut up now.
No worries, Stuart. I see Saul's hand up, so I'll pick up Saul, and then I'll probably just go back to chat and Thomas know that actually they, just going back to the question around demand, that it's quite similar, but not to such an extent as in Scotland. So it will be quite interesting maybe to compare the story. But I'll bring Saul first, and then Thomas, if you don't mind, I'll just get back to your comments. So Saul, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Stuart, and you also. Thank you. You gave us a time to reflect a little bit, because it's so rich in information, and you try each time to see how can we just, get this into Flanders. Where do we start with it? I guess we still have many questions. I got a few ones. Is like, what I like is also the tailored approach. Now, I don't know with how many people you are there to get this program started, to support the let's say the teams that are in the need of upskilling. And maybe I should tell Stuart as well that our reason, or the main reason why we asked for this, is basically because we feel that within our primary care boards there will be a need for those different individuals who are from GPs to social workers, and who, we all understand data, but it's not particularly something that we are used to work with. So that's why we want really to learn how can we help those primary care boards when they start making up their plans for the future, and they have to look at statistics, at data about socioeconomic status and about the health, etc., etc. So that was really our intention to why we asked the question and this webinar. So thank you very much. But then again, yes, with how many people, and also how long does it take? Well, maybe it's very simplistic, but to train the trainer, is this something that you have to foresee also when you prepare to watch such a program? And once you are supporting, how long do you give the support? Is it something that you say, okay, we can follow it up, we can monitor with you? You see, it's a whole range of maybe practical questions, small questions, actually. Sorry about that.
If I
No,
just may add, if I may add one more question on the things that Saul asks are, how do you manage to let all those people work together with all the different data, all the different organizations, all the different data? How do you manage to get it in one like your organization who can do this for everyone? So that's I think it's also very interesting to know.
We try to do it for everyone. Is probably the best response. It's a real challenge, and what we try to get is groups or specific areas either within an organization or within an industry that have already had some success. And when you're talking about the care boards, for me, it is having others that have already gone through it, that have already experienced that change, if there are, to come in and help support and talk through their experiences, because I can talk all day to someone about what I think they should be doing, but you listen a lot more to someone that's been in the same position and has those definite experiences and the scars from them as well. That's important to say, that not all of this is plain sailing and we'll get there. I think we all know that. It's well, that we tried this and this didn't work. That's more important sometimes than the success stories. For us, we've had interactions with organizations as the Data Lab that are going on 5-6 years now. And what we've done is take them from quite an early stage. So where a lot of people are right now is, I have data, I know I should be doing something with it. For what is it? Or there is a goal, a target that's been set for me. How do I begin to achieve that? So what we do is take them through the process that I kind of spoke to you about, that we give them the understanding, and that's across the organization. That's where we would always start. Here's the understanding to get your data right. And it's not just, let's jump to the end. There's unfortunately a lot of groundwork that doesn't necessarily have a big flashy endpoint. It's not a great visual, it's not a really great tool, but it sets the foundations. And we've done that and taken them from there, which at then that point help them get the skills that they need to further that. So to start taking the data foundation they have and analyzing and using data science and engineering on it, and then all the way through to working with academics, to even themselves having PhD students in the organization doing the research and working through in that way. I wouldn't say one size fits all, and we're a small team, so we're just about 40 people in the Data Lab. So there's not a lot of us, so we can't keep in touch with everyone all the way through, but that's what we've got the network for as well. And when I talk about community, what we want to be able to do is put organizations in a place where they can go to the community and say, I now need this, and we can say, great, here are 6 companies or 6 people that can do that now and be your hand holder through the next steps. So that's kind of where we sit. And all the while, obviously, at each stage of this journey, you need different skills, and it may not be the same partner from phase 1 or stage 1, 0, whatever you want to call it, all the way to the end. The likelihood is you will need different partners and different skills and evolve a team as you make your way through this, and involve your existing team. And that's where both the upskilling and the graduate level start to merge and really add value. I suppose in practicality, it's I won't lie to you, as the Data Lab, it's very difficult because we don't have a specification to industry. So we're working to resource. I mean, we could be 400 people in scale and probably all be working absolutely flat out. So for us, it's about creating a point, a touchstone that works really well, a case study and an example, and giving people a framework to aim for. So if one person has done it and done it successfully, there's then a structure to everyone else fall behind. And it doesn't always work, but that then makes everyone else's journey significantly easier. So once we've achieved that, it's about getting that out there, shouting about these case studies to help people see what's possible and the path to doing that, to succeeding.
I just want to ask one question about the citizen approach, because you also talk about citizens, and in the primary care boards, we also have a representation of the person with care and welfare needs. And I was just wondering, how do you manage that, or how do you make sure that also citizens can understand the data?
That's a lot of what we're trying to do with data skills for work. So you know, we're all data citizens. We all create data and have need to be able to protect our own data or understand how organisations can use that data about us. So we are starting that at school level with getting children to understand their role as data citizens. But in terms of the workforce upskilling, there is a gap in that kind of training at the moment that we've identified, and so we're working with training providers to try and create that sort of jumping off point. So we've just started a project where we're going to be working with the trade unions to do a very, very entry level. This is why data is important. This is how you create data. This is how organizations can read and understand your data, and use that as a sort of gateway into maybe having people start to understand what the sort of upskilling requirement would be for that. So the partners that we're working with is Union Learning, which is a sort of education body that works across all the unions. Doesn't matter about sectors, so they can just do this like just 2 hours or an hour and a half taster training course for people. The partner that we're working with, Digital Skills Education, do a lot of work with my colleagues that are running the schools project. So it's very engaging, and it's kind of thinking about it, you know, instead of thinking about you know, they do these live lessons. One's about defending the rhino, and one's about creating your own data selfie. So they're sort of getting people to do a little bit of coding, live coding, but dressing it up as a, you know, it's like this is an you know, a sort of ecology project or something. So it's contextualizing it. This was. They sort of think that, you know, about 4 years ago, this is where everybody was with cyber security and understanding and sort of level of understanding about that. So we're hoping that by starting with these types of projects, then we might be able to expand that out. And I think somebody mentioned train the trainer as well. So we're sort of thinking about how we can work with frontline, you know, people who are delivering employability services within the city region, and to sort of have those people understanding the demand for data skills and the opportunity that it offers, so that they can then pass that on to the clients that they're working with as well.
Great, thank you. Before I get to the other question, I just would like to slightly go back to that demand question, because I know that Thomas has to leave us 1:30. So Thomas, maybe from what you've heard, or also kind of reacting to that question of demand, because you're coming from a kind of different region. So we have a representative here from North Denmark. So Thomas, if you would mind to maybe step in and share a bit like how you see the situation, or maybe what's a success in terms of incentivizing your you know, candidates in you know, getting the right skills and so on.
Yes, yes, thank you. And thank you for a very interesting presentation. There's something to learn from. But our main challenges in North Denmark region. I'm sitting in North Denmark region. We primarily our focus is hospitals and hospitals, and in a certain extent GPs also, or we are financing the GPs. We have we can recruit data scientists. It's not the biggest challenge. It's also because we have a university as our neighbor. They like to work with us, and we have plenty of data. But the problem at our place is data literacy in the organization as a whole. There we have some challenges that maybe the decisions makers do not always understand what we are delivering data, or how you can use data. And one of another challenge is data quality, especially when we are talking about AI. It demands very high degree of quality of data, and that's a very big issue now. So there's a lot of ideas of working with AI, but it demands very high quality data, and that's an issue at our organization for the moment. And I know also the other regions in Denmark have precisely the same challenges. And of course, we have legal challenges also of using the data or to combine data or access data. This is also the main. So we don't necessarily need data scientist skills or short of these skills. It's not for the moment, but of course we can always need more. There's a lot of demand for data, definitely, and it's increasing. But it's more that we have challenges with trying to control all the data we have and all the data we are producing. It's more that these issues.
I think these. Oh, sorry.
So what you say, Thomas, is that there's so much data, and someone needs how to filter it and to make sure that people get the right data, because this is also part of using the data, is that if you get the right data, you're confident, you trust the sources. If not, you have to seek for it, and maybe you don't know if the sources are reliable enough. But I like your point also about data literacy, and this comes back also to what Cameron and Anna was presenting. That was nice, the description on data literacy, which I'm not sure even in Flanders if we really have a good perception of what is data literacy. And what is good also is that when you looked at your presentation, was it Anna? You presented the data, the different groups of and the literacy.
Yeah, well, we've both touched on that, yeah, but we've have it mapped to these 4 levels.
That was great, because there was really differences amongst them, but still you could see, the value of thinking about what is data literacy for a specific group. Thank you. And sorry for interrupting.
No, that's okay. I mean, Cameron might want to talk more on this, but what we're trying to do through our data leaders program and the driving value from data, and also the online courses that we've funded, is really all about this data adoption. Thing. This is sort of trying to help people who are leading teams on a senior level to understand the power of data and how they can harness that data in their organization. All of our online courses that we funded are free. They're available on FutureLearn as MOOCs. So I can share some links with you. There's one called The Power of Data in Health and Social Care, which is based on the principles of healthcare data analytics, but not necessarily for data scientists. So there's lots of resources there.
I think it's just added what Anna said, really key to approach the data, a solution to the data issues from all sides. Thomas, you mentioned Data quality being an issue for me, that sits with a data worker, understanding what the input needs to be exactly as it's asked for and in the right place and in the right format, because that's the baseline, and that comes from people that probably don't care to understand the data analytics side, needing to understand why their role is so crucial to that. And being able to articulate that in a non-technical way is sometimes very, very challenging. We have that consistently, and that's why Anna's development of the data citizen and the data worker, for me, is one of the most key pieces of what we're trying to do in Scotland, that we can produce, as you say, you have enough data professionals, you have enough of those, so that's fine, but they need data of quality to work on, and they need consistent data that's of quality. One data set is fine, but I think, as Nikki's just mentioned in the conversation, you need to combine multiple sets. You need expertise in the data field of legal data. How can you share? How do you anonymize? In Scotland, we've had some success with synthetic data sets and producing those, and then applying tools to that and working in that regard, both in finance and in healthcare. There've been a couple of examples across Scotland. But it is that literacy piece that is the challenge. The data professionals are really good, but they also have, I hesitate to say, a real world literacy problem, but they also need to be able to translate their data to the rest of the organization. And it goes both ways. What we're trying to do is find that middle ground, so the professionals and the leaders can have a conversation in the middle and be comfortable, or the workers and the professionals in the same way. And it all ties into that. I'm just going to pick up on Joanna's question about attracting talent, retaining talent, and ensuring knowledge stays in the organization when people leave. I think this comes back to Stuart's point. Maybe the third piece here comes back to Stuart's point, that data has been used in healthcare for a long time, and successfully. But does that data and that knowledge set stay in the organization when that individual leaves? So there's a different look to how the data is used, and being able to capture expertise and understanding, even if you don't have a way of utilizing it. If you're capturing that data to then apply artificial intelligence on to help try and fill any shortages or any gaps in that space. Attracting data talent for me boils down to, what are you doing as a company, as an organization? What is the fundamental? In healthcare, you have a really, really powerful message of, we are here to improve and sustain people's lives. There isn't much of a better message than that. That for me is the attraction. It's not necessarily the data science, it's what is the output of that. And then retaining the talent is the data science. If you take in a data scientist that will sit turning Excel spreadsheets into databases all day, they're not going to have job satisfaction, and they're going to move on when they can. So it's making sure they are challenged and are given enough challenge to really feel they're using their skill set to the best opportunity, which is challenging if you're not at the level where you can provide that, but you need the skill set. There's no one solution, I think, but in terms of attraction, Thomas, you said it sounds fantastic that you don't have a shortage of skills, so attraction is less of an issue, but for us, it's that key message. What is the core of what you do? And as I say, you all have a very, very strong, there isn't much of a better core message to what you're trying to do. And it's leaning on that when you're looking for these people, because if they're passionate about that core message, they will want to be there. They will want to do the job and do good. I think that the translation piece is key. I think getting that across. I tend to waffle and speak a lot, but it is, how clearly can you communicate what you're doing? As an organization, this is our goal. As a data scientist, this is my goal. As a leader, this is my goal, and then trying to find the gaps. So for me, single statements, if it can be boiled down to being that easy, helps that translation piece, with no jargon if possible. no acronyms and technical chat, because that's the issue I have. Someone will speak technically to me and I'll go, no, don't know, don't have a clue. So it's helping bridge that. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Cameron. Johanna was definitely appreciated your answer and said that indeed the powerful message, what are you doing, in the quotation. So any other remarks, questions, observations? Stuart, is it you want to come in? So I just hear someone.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a little bit more about the data quality issue that we had, because and what are the real challenges, I guess, in terms of data quality? Because I suppose I've always figured that it's extremely difficult when you have, I mean, if you look at a hospital level at any rate, then if you think about the image collections that they have, then every single X-ray machine is set up differently. And so this poses a huge challenge for using any kind of AI. And I figure that actually it's extremely difficult to tell medical practitioners what to do. and whether anybody had any ideas about what to do about that. And was it, sorry, I missed, was it South Denmark who had the data quality problem?
North Denmark, yeah.
North Denmark, sorry, yeah. And I just wondered whether that was the issue, you know, that really there's so much variability across different, well, both even inside a single hospital, you can see things being set up very differently from consultant to consultant, for example. But here, I guess we're mainly talking about primary care, so I don't know whether things are really different in that environment.
Well, we don't have Thomas anymore with us to answer that question, but we can just make a note to follow up on that.
I think just to jump in, Stuart, I don't know about the healthcare side of things, but process then at that point is how, for me, we nail that down, that there is, and I'm sure there is set process, but as you say, everyone will have a preference and will have a tweak.
I think when you talk about that, I can tell you that NHS England orders 120 different types of sterile glove, and that's because the consultant or the each different unit gets its choice, and see that as a kind of some kind of right, yeah. So there are huge organizational issues before we get to data. Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the level of autonomy that's typically afforded to medical practitioners, then that poses massive cultural challenges, actually, and that's a very serious issue. Yeah,
I agree, and I think that's back to the worker and the leader level, understanding that some behaviors are going to be massively detrimental to your attempts to use data effectively. As you say, that's a fantastic stat, by the way. I may steal that at some point. But 120 different types of glove is... I don't see the data knock on, but I get the message behind it, that actually that kind of variability is really hard to account for in almost anything.
Yeah, certainly is.
Yeah, sorry, on you go.
No, I had one other thing that I wanted to ask Saul, actually. I'm sorry, I'm hijacking this meeting at the moment. And
no worries. We said we have time for a discussion and questions. So,
so Andrea, you should just tell me to shut up. Saul, my understanding is that Flanders was doing some work on personal data stores, but not so much but they were citizen personal data stores. They weren't healthcare personal data stores. And I just wondered whether you'd had any interaction with those people, and to what extent you saw it as a way that you're thinking about moving, because certainly around UK, there's a huge interest because of the data transformation that people are looking to carry out over the next 4 or 5 years.
Well, Stuart, that's a very interesting question. I had the same one from Wales. So let's see. And you're right. Well, Flanders developed a citizen profile database, and but it's mainly about public authorities information.
Yes.
Now we are still struggling with one part of it, and that's about the vaccination, because part of it, vaccination now is registered via what we call VaccinNet, so VaccineNet network. That's a database, and also linked up to what we have in Flanders, VitaLink, a vault, a database vault to share medical, and also coming, normally, I don't know how, if it's really already there, but to share also social care data.
Okay.
So this is the main part of it, but in a way, the idea is still, how can we link it up also with this citizen profile, because actually there you have also the data on the vaccination, and how have you been vaccinated, what was your vaccine, when was your data, etc., in order to get this green certificate or this passport on vaccination. So yes,
okay,
now there are other discussions, and that it should become that the linking of the medical data, or more the person's data on the medical record and social care, for example, should become a part of the citizen profile, but we're not yet there.
No, yeah, because I guess this raises issues about infrastructure, because I think that your citizen profile gives people an identity, so that they have so it's possible to authenticate people and say what their identity is, but also these things are controlled by the citizens, so it means that you could really change the way that consent works if you had health data held in a similar way.
Yeah, and VitaLink, so this vault system includes the same perspective. So it's a citizen, the patient, who decides what kind of data is going into the vault, and who is who can consult the data. But I don't know if there will ever be something like a citizen profile combined with the medical records, the electronic records of patients. I don't know. There's a huge discussion. If you ask me my opinion, I would say go for it. But like you said, probably infrastructure-wise and then also privacy protection might there might be some issues.
It's I guess, I mean, the technology the citizen profile is based on it can make a very firm distinction between the data and the function, and that would mean that the processing of the data could be separated from storage, so that many of the privacy things become a little bit clearer than the way that they are with many systems at the moment. That if you like, the apps that process the data aren't bound in with the mode of storage and so on. So I think it's an interesting potential. Do you know, have they published any more results? Does the citizen profile cover the whole of Flanders, or is it just a pilot?
No, it's covering the Flanders, because it's already used for the vaccination. But if you like, I can check who is actually dealing with it in our government, and I might be able, I think, to link you up, and probably also the colleagues of Wales might be interested.
Yes.
No problem. I will do that. I will see who is dealing with it, and if we can set up some kind of a discussion around.
No, that'd be very interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
Just to add to that, I think these initiatives about changing this, it's a bit cliched, but changing the status quo, moving away from what was quite traditional infrastructure to methods like you're talking about there, are a great way of challenging what people's perception of data is. Giving someone control, as Anna said, you've then got really effective data citizens feeding into your whole organization. If they're if they have control, they will be more aware, they will be more understanding of the data aspect of it. And putting that control back in their hands, I think, is a great way of doing that learning, because it's almost forced. They then have to understand what it means to be their own data controller, and it takes that off of yourselves. But I think initiatives like that are fantastic.
Okay. Great, thank you. And there was one more chat, even though I think we've partially answered, but so you had a question about potential application of this case study. If I understood right, case study approach that was adapted in Scotland, that if this is something that can be done in Flanders, was that the question?
Yes, and also Cameron was speaking about different case studies, so I was wondering about that. But that's also why I think it's maybe up to Nikki and Carol even to they know better actually how it works now in Flanders, or what they really need. So it was an open question from my side to my colleagues. I'm sorry.
I'm going to look at Carol here because really unfortunate I was too late and I missed the beginning of the meeting. So I'm afraid I also missed the case studies that were presented, but I understood that the meeting is being recorded and that I can maybe check it out tomorrow or later this week. Because I think from a general perspective, we'd really be interested in that, but I can't genuinely comment now because I've really missed the information here. So I'll go to Carol if that's okay.
So a really quick recap of the two that I brought up. One was dangerous fall prediction and prevention. So in sheltered housing and in personal accommodation, being able to relay that data back to the appropriate family members or health emergency services, so they can then act on that really quickly, or before even an action has happened, that they can predict a change in behavior or pattern that then says, a social worker or someone needs to go and check in this individual. One of the examples of the data they've used has been electricity monitoring. So just a smart home monitor. And if the usage is abnormal, they can then say, well, they're moving less, or they've not turned the kettle on as they normally would. This is a flag for someone to go and just check on them, perhaps before they normally would, things like that. The other one was, and please bear with me as I pull the slide back up and make sure I do not say the wrong thing, because I could do that. COPD, patient hospitalizations, giving people access to their own data through either having the technology with them and being able to record it, but letting them monitor their own condition and preventing them going into the need for going into hospital. So that's had a really great reduction in hospitalizations, because people are taking control, similar to what you guys, Stuart and Saul, you've just spoken about. They have access to their own data, they can understand it, and they can take measures to prevent them having an impact on the health service. So these are both quite preventative cases, but they're a great example of data being shared and being available to the right people to be able to make a prevention and to solve some issues. I'm happy to share the link to some of the case studies that we have, as well as the data lab, if that would be helpful.
Nice. Okay, it's really interesting that for the first case, that really goes that broad. It's not healthcare data. It's like using electricity data, which is, I think, for Flanders, but I'm not really sure. So I'm also looking at Sol here. It would be a really innovative way of using and combining all those resources. I think for the subject is definitely something that there are already a lot of projects going on here, but nothing that combines that sort of different and out of the box even thinking data. So I think that's really interesting. The second one is more natural, would be easier to adopt, I guess, because it's situated within healthcare and they're all more used to this already. But I think both are really interesting examples. And then especially the first one, if we could by a few case studies show what would be really the added value of the combination, that combining two data banks, 1 + 1 is not 2, it equals 4. It's like it's exponentially going up if you can combine the right things. I think that would be really interesting, but
I agree, because we have a center in Flanders, an expert center for fault prediction and prevention. and they are now looking how can we connect to the first line, and they are already trying of a few years to get there, but nobody ever thought of the things you bring up now. So I think it's very interesting to introduce this to them, also to look how can we work together and how can you use data for this, because I was also a field worker in a former time, not so long ago, and that was one of the issues that we often had with the hospital. They go to people at home, people have fallen, they bring them to the hospital, they go back to home, a week later they fall again, and nobody knew what to do. So if you can prevent this using data, I think it's very, very interesting.
I completely agree, and I think it's something Scotland's done very, very well, and it's perhaps the scale we're at allows us to connect these kind of people a lot more easily, to say, well, here's an energy provider that runs the smart meters, to make that information available. But it has been a real strength, I think, of the country being able to put those together. As you say, it's not something I would have thought of myself at all, but there's no privacy invasion. So you're not putting a camera in the home, you're not putting a personal tracker on someone. It is simply the energy usage. And you, again, at that point, you can start to, and there's a couple of projects going on about dementia. If they start using electricity on a larger scale at 2 a.m. in the morning, or their timings become erratic, you can start to make inferences in a really effective way that, as I say, isn't impeding anyone's privacy, but is helping paint a picture that perhaps you wouldn't otherwise have that information. So it's really, really effective. Yeah, absolutely. We'd be more than happy to share those case studies with you guys to just hopefully kick off some conversations and see if that opportunity is there for you as well.
Yeah, I think definitely, as Carol said, for the fall prevention, I know that they've started to look at other like data sources, or to look a bit outside the box. I know that they've been working with pharmacists, because I have a pharmaceutical background myself, so that's the only that's the few things I know already. And that they also started making like these checklists, and they screen for medication, whether this indicates it's an elderly person or they have a risk for falling, or if they would fall, would it imply that they have a severe that is really it has a big impact. For example, someone with osteoporosis, for example, you especially don't want them to fall, and stuff like that. To screen the medication, and then that they combined with checklists and different health workers. Like, okay, how is their house, for example? Is it 1 floor? Is it 2 floors? Do they have to take stairs? Is there a carpet in the room? Can we change small stuff like that? But it's always it's action. It was action oriented, not so much like how can we monitor this, or how can we just keep an eye out. And I think that perspective would be quite new, as far as I know.
Because in the year 2000 they already started with fall prevention, and now we are 2021, and I have the feeling we are still at the same level. So maybe this can be a breakthrough.
If I'm off mute, I'm going to put, we've got 2 case studies. One is an actual smart home with more sensors and more accoutrement, and that's the first one I've just put in the chat there. And then the second one is using smart meters. That's more of a press release than a case study, but hopefully in the next couple of months, as that project comes to a close, we'll be able to perhaps share some case studies, or even make introductions to the team that have been involved in that.
That's excellent. Great, thank you.
We'll read it through after the meeting.
I think it's important to say that outside of this as well, if there's any questions or anything, please feel free to get in touch to contact either myself or Anna directly, or the Data Lab, and we'd be happy to talk through more case studies or potential ways we could demonstrate what we've done, or vice versa, because I think there's a lot to learn in both directions here. That we're just at different levels in different areas, so it'd be good to have that crossover and that reciprocal learning as well.
Cameron, would you like to say something about the connection to Blackwood Homes? I mean, because the example that you put up, the one about the Future Scot one, very much it involves a private provider, but they have quite a strong relationship with you, as far as I understand, in terms of doing things. Is that right?
Yeah, so the fall prevention was a private provider or a private company in industry. Unfortunately, in terms of speed of rolling out solutions like this, it does tend to involve industry. And we work with Blackwood quite closely. So that's a project we sponsored and part funded. So that's an example of the kind of piece that the academic support for these can really come into its own, that it does sometimes require industry to really push it forward, but that being linked back into the healthcare system is really, really valuable as well. I don't want to put too much emphasis on industry, but the way the data lab's set up, that is where a lot of our projects happen. And then we see that being surfaced back into the public sector once it's been taken to market by the company. But we like to involve as many people as we can that would benefit from the solution from the word go. Again, more than happy to talk through how that kind of works. And there are a few variations in there.
Great, excellent, thank you. So I don't know, Carol, Sol, Nick, do you have any more questions or general observations, comments? I mean, I think it's quite clear that we are definitely interested in those case studies to follow up, but is there anything else that you may have picked up during the discussion or during the presentation, sorry?
Not at the moment for me, but I'd be very happy to come back at it via email if that's okay, if I rewatch the session.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think we've picked up. Oh, sorry, Sol.
No. I only wanted to say it takes time because there's so much, and we are not at that level. So
I think I wanted to say the same thing. We've picked up a lot, so thank you for that.
Well, that sounds great.
I don't know,
yes,
is Tino still there? Because I was wondering, he has also this international view and his perspective. Tino, have you ever, seen similar initiatives? Or I'm sorry, my video, I don't dare to turn it on. I must say it's volatile.
Well, I'm thinking more now in the local context in Catalonia, where we have, let's say, a strong health information system at primary care level and also at public health, but there is a sort of fragmentation, and what it was really insightful from your side is how you are applying all these approaches of data science. And in our case, I think we have a lot of room to improve in this sense, because we have connected well the health information system from a clinical perspective, but the secondary use of health data for improving health services. There are some remarkable progress, like for instance, the risk certification process, but you can call this data science because it's advanced data analytics, but it's not applying artificial intelligence. I think this is where we have an opportunity to work, not only in Catalonia, but everywhere. And especially, and I was keen to see if you were working along this line, because I think this is really one of the options for the future, is connecting the systematic analysis of variations in clinical practice to improvements in healthcare delivery. So you have like those that are analyzing data systematically, detecting differences in clinical variations, and then pointing to the models of care that are providing the best outcomes. So connecting management to results from this analysis. But I think you didn't cover these aspects, and this was my expectation.
I'm less aware of any work going on in that kind of respect. I've not been involved in anything directly, but I can have a look and see if I can surface some case studies from Scotland, if there are any in that space for you, Tino.
Okay.
Great, thank you. So we have a couple of minutes left. So is there anyone who has any last minute question, comments, observation before we finish? No, silence. So I think that brings us to the end, which I think it's been really great. I'm really pleased about the fact that we had this almost 1 hour discussion. So I hope that you find it useful. As we were saying, the session was recorded, so we will share the session with you. And definitely this is the appeal particularly to our colleagues from Flanders to review the session. We'll also share with you the questions from the chat, the links that have been shared. So please have a look, a review, and we will be very happy to do any follow-up, because this is basically this is not like one-off session. And as Cameron said, we always kind of like doing this mutually. So yeah, it would be really exciting to hear your feedback, potentially interest in exploring further topics, and continue having this discussion. So thank you so much, first of all, Anna and Cameron, for sharing your presentation, your insights, and thank you to you all for all really great questions, fruitful discussion, and I'm looking forward to our next sessions as well. Thank you so much.
Thank
Have
you,
a lovely day.
for
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.